Rob on the mic, got heat in his tone. Talking summer lineups while the city's all snow. Winter on the schedule, but his heart's in July. 7th inning in his head, crowd already on fire. Santa in the dugout, sack full of wins. Stack parade routes, we already friends. Santa check the list, Queens first, say less. Champ banners in his bag, all wrapped in orange mesh. Hot cocoa in the cup, but the talk stays bold. Old school caps, new school soul. Rob painting pennants with every word he shares. Summer in his voice, cold wind in the air. From December chills to that Shade Bridge sun. Mets talk live where the future gets spun. Snowman under city lights, METS all night. Santa drop rings from the sky. Championships for the Mets we ride. Hands up, this our year. Even if the winter's here. From the cold to the summer high. Mets fans never say goodbye.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to a special Christmas edition of Midnight Show Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. Hopefully everybody is enjoying the beginning of Christmas today and hopefully had a safe and healthy Christmas Eve as we get through this holiday season with an off season for the New York Mets. Will go down in history. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody could have predicted as a Met fan or just a baseball fan in general that if somebody would have told you before the offseason started that Nimmo, Alonso, Diaz, and McNeil are all off the team this offseason, you would have probably think I was crazy. I might have had a little bit too much to drink during the holidays, or I'm just crazy. And that actually happened. The core is no more. The core that we knew for 9-10 years with McNeil, with Nimmo, with Alonso, and throw Diaz in that mix are all gone. It's amazing that David Stearns actually pulled it off and did it quickly. This all happened within a month. And now we get into the new year very soon in 7 days, where the Mets need outfield help, first base help, and top line start and pitching help. And the New York Mets are ready to, I guess, add to the roster, because right now I don't think you can start the season with the roster we have. I really don't think so. And it's unfortunate because of the fact that the New York Mets, with David Stearns running things, has not been as successful as I think a lot of Mets fans thought they would be. This is the first year with David Stearns. That's not true. I would say last offseason was the first time he put his mark on this team. Right? He did the rotation. He added the bullpen. He added some guys to the lineup. And it resulted in 83 wins and missing the playoffs. That is something where you look at David Stearns and say, all right, your first attempt at touching this team and making it your own in 2025 was an outright disaster after the Mets came off an extreme high of 2024 and all the good vibes and the good feelings. Game 6 of the NLCS, nobody thought we would even make the playoffs, let alone get to Game 6 of the NLCS. And then that offseason started by signing Juan Soto. And we end the year talking about a disaster of the season, missing the playoffs in Game 162, getting beat by them goddamn Miami Marlins once again. And now we're in the offseason where we didn't offer a contract to Pete Alonso. We played games with Edwin Diaz negotiating and led us to not signing him. Brandon Nimmo was traded, who had a no-trade clause, and Nimmo, who said, is this deal done? And it's only up to me to make this deal happen. If I approve it, David Stearns says yes, because David Stearns didn't want Brandon Nimmo on this team anymore. So Brandon Nimmo says, why would I not accept this trade when David Stearns is willing to trade me and doesn't want me anymore? So, and we all knew Jeff McNeil was going to get traded. So that was the obvious one. But the other three were very interesting. We didn't think Nimmo was going to leave because of his no trade clause. We thought there was a chance that Pete Alonso would leave, but we think the Mets would make an attempt, which would have been a 3-year deal if they even tried. But they didn't try at all to offer him a contract. And you can disagree with that or agree with that or don't have any emotion towards that. The fact is, David Stearns did not offer a contract to Pete Alonso. And the writing was on the wall last year when they were not setting the market for Pete Alonso because they knew there was no market for Pete Alonso. And let's be quite honest. Was there really a market for Pete Alonso? There really wasn't. Like, who was really rushing to get him? We know the Boston Red Sox were interested, but they weren't really seemed like uber aggressive. The Orioles, who were desperate, who needed to make a splash, especially after the Toronto Blue Jays have made a splash this year, and you're in a division that is probably the best in the league right now, on the American League right now. So they got to keep up with the other teams in their division. And that was their big signing. And, for a guy like Pete Alonso, finding a team to give him the 5th year, it was obvious he was going to go there. And the way it materialized rather quickly with Baltimore, it was obvious that there wasn't many teams lining up to sign Pete Alonso for a 5-year deal or more. So good for Pete Alonso. He got the deal he was looking for. Never fault the player for taking the money. They have a limited amount of years in their career. You gotta bank. You gotta collect as much as you can because we all know. I mean, again, they're millionaires, multi-millionaires. They shouldn't be worrying about a paycheck 25 years from now. But you get as much money as you can while you have that ability to make that money. So I'm not excited. Honestly, I'm not excited about the rest of this offseason. I'm really not. It is Christmas, right? You get that holiday spirit up. But the Mets find ways to just piss us off. And that is where the New York Mets seem to do that. If it's not in the offseason, it's at the trade deadline or it's during the season while we slowly see the choke job of the New York Mets slowly take place over a 4-month span like in 2025. So it does suck. It really does suck that I'm okay, and I said this many times, I'm okay with changing the core or fixing the core. In this case, it's completely changing the core. I don't mind it, but you better bring in new players to represent that core or tell me who is going to be those guys. We know right now it's Soto and Lindor. They're part of this core, this new core together. Is it going to be Carson Bench? Is Cody Bellinger going to be here? Kyle Tucker? Like, you got to replace the core with other core guys. And if you believe it's the young prospects that you believe should be that good, great. Then do it. So I don't really want to be Mr. Negative on Christmas, but David Stearns looks like he's rebuilding, right? There's no aggressive approach to getting top line starters, right? I said it's on the last show that I did. We heard all these rumors, right? It started the offseason with the Mets being really in on Framber Valdez. And then we heard about Tariq Skubal. Then Freddie Peralta. Then we heard Edward Cabrera and Sandy Alcantara, Joe Ryan in the first month of the offseason. And it's been quiet these last couple of weeks where we heard nothing about the Mets being linked to starting pitching, top line starting pitching. We've heard the Mets being on, B, C, D level starters, which is not what we need. We have enough 4th to 5th starters. We can build a rotation if it started with the fourth starter. Like, that is how many guys the Mets have in their rotation that are fourth starters, right? I don't even consider Clay Holmes a number 3. And honestly, I think that's what we're going to be talking about, is Clay Holmes being the number 3. Now, you could do a lot worse than Clay Holmes. But, we put Clay Holmes on this pedestal like he was so good, but it looked good on the surface because of the fact that the rotation was so bad that Clay Holmes was just a serviceable starting pitcher. If he was in even a slightly above average rotation, Clay Holmes would be a fourth starter. That is where it annoys me, where if we see this and we understand this and we know the direct effect of the Mets choking for the final 4 months of the season, yeah, the lineup struggled, right? It wasn't as good in 2024 as 2025 was worse than 2024. But they did score just under 5 runs a game. If you look around where other teams were that made the playoffs, some of them were right there. So the Mets scored enough runs to win enough games to make the playoffs. Now, when you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. You get hot at the right time, things happen. But when you're starting pitching from June until the end of the year, couldn't go deep into games, couldn't give you quality starts, your bullpen was coming in every day in the 4th to 5th inning, you wore out your bullpen, there was nobody you could trust in your rotation, and even if the guys couldn't pitch well in the rotation, they couldn't even go deeper into games to protect the bullpen, which led to more problems. And with an offense that from June on scored more runs and were better offensively, they were constantly fighting to come back in games and always behind. They had to come back in almost, it felt like every game where they were down 3 runs. They were down multiple runs early, and the Mets had to always fight back. I don't care how good your offense is, you can't come back every single game. And it felt like the Mets always started the game 1-0, trailing 1-0, and continue to trail. And it's hard to come back like that. The offense is going to press, right? Anytime you get runners on base or runners in scoring position, they're going to press because they know if they don't come through, well, we're still down. We're still trailing. And then it just builds up when the game gets later and later. And this is what happens. Yeah, Radiant, exactly. They did. I think it was the Mets in 2024 scored about 5.5 or 5.7 runs per game, and the Mets were just under 5. So it's a run difference. But when your pitching staff is giving up over 6 runs a game, they were hitting around 6 runs per game. That was their average per game. Like, it's hard to win like that. There is no team in baseball that is scoring 6 runs per game offensively on average. It's just not happening. So when it comes to the New York Mets and what they're trying to do here, I couldn't even give you one example or one answer of what they're trying to do or what David Stearns is trying to do with this team. I just don't know. I really don't know. Like, you bring in Simeon, who is past his prime. He might have a little revelation with the offense a little bit. We know he's very good defensively. Then you sign Jorge Polanco, who's in his mid-30s as well. So, guys like Simeon, guys like Jorge Polanco are kind of like that missing piece where, you're a contending team, but you need that extra player like a Polanco that's a utility guy that can play multiple positions, that can, be a solid bat in your lineup here and there. And Simeon's kind of like that veteran guy who's got that championship pedigree, who's a great defender. Those are like the filler missing pieces of a contending team. These guys are so needed right now. It's sad the Mets offseason is revolving around Marcus Semien and Jorge Polanco for your lineup, and you lost McNeil, Nimmo, and Alonso. And again, I'm not crying poor with these guys. I'm not. But to think that Jorge Polanco and Marcus Semien are all of a sudden just going to, revitalize this lineup. And they might be better with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor in a lineup with them. They might be. But I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that I'm confident in that will happen. I'm confident that Lindor and Soto will get the job done. But when they're constantly getting on base and other guys can't drive people in, you're going to have a problem. So, Cody Bellinger is out there to get. He fills a hole. Any hole you want. Left, center, first base, doesn't matter. That's why Cody Bellinger fits like a glove for the New York Mets. That is obvious. That is it couldn't be put on a silver platter better for David Stearns. Like, I understand you don't want to go 7 years on Cody Bellinger, but if you're going to lose out, and I hate this, there is nothing more I hate than our team not signing a player because they went to another team for 1 extra year. And everybody's be like, well, why would you want 7 years? You know what? If I can get every great player or every really good player on a 3-year deal, of course I would love that. But guess what? Really good players to great players aren't getting 3-year deals. They're not accepting 3-year deals. They're getting 4+, probably 5 to start, plus years. That's the problem. And it's very hard for David Stearns to put a team together that is worth getting excited about when you constantly don't give anybody 4 years or more. It's 3 years or less. Obviously, we've seen that already with how they're going about this offseason. Luke Weaver, 2 years. Devin Williams, 3 years. Jorge Polanco, 2 years. Marcus Semien, they traded for Brandon Nimmo, who had 5 years left, and Semien has 3 years left. So there you go. Everybody they acquired or signed is 3 years or less. It's very hard to build a team that is competitive to do that because you need a lot of bounce back seasons. There's not one guy on this team, maybe Jorge Polanco because he's a different type of player. He didn't have a bad season. He had a solid season. So you could probably count on what you got from him, what you saw from him last year, this year. That's not much of a downgrade here. Because even if he plays, if he bats, if he's a DH, it's better than what the Mets had. But with Semien, with Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, what do they all have in common? They had down seasons. They had bad seasons. So to get Luke Weaver, a guy who was a closer for the New York Yankees and became a setup guy because of Devin Williams, and then became the closer again when Devin Williams sucked, Luke Weaver completely imploded at the end of the season last year for the Yankees. Devin Williams he had a few bright spots, but was mostly bad all season. So, of course, you're going to get those guys on lesser deals because they messed up during their free agent year. And that is why the New York Mets are kind of hard to, or giving us that excitement that we need. And I'm not talking about signing guys just to make us happy. Obviously, that's part of it. But the possibility of contending, the possibility of putting a winning team together. I'm sorry, Jorge Polanco and Marcus Semien, can they provide some good qualities or some good offensive stats where you can say, all right, it's not replacing Nimmo and Pete Alonso's production, but they're solid players. Sure. But to expect Carson Benz to come in here and, take the world by storm and, put God knows who at first base, it just doesn't make sense. Like, even with Carson Bench, who I think is going to play one of the two outfield spots available, either left field or center field, I'm okay with that. But I'm only okay with that if you sign Cody Bellinger or Kyle Tucker, because that is a security blanket just in case Carson Bench is not very good or is not ready yet. You can't have Carson Bench up here and God knows who in left field that is somebody you just got on a 2-year deal as another stopgap, and Carson Bench isn't good and possibly not ready yet. Why can't Carson Bench be like Brett Beatty was? Brett Beatty was a very highly regarded prospect, just like Carson Bench. Why can't Carson Bench be like Brett Beatty and failed a few years in a row and might have found it a couple of years later? What if that's the case with Carson Bench? Who do you fall back on? What other bet you're falling back on? Another prospect? You're really hoping for everything to work out and everybody to have bounce back seasons that had bad seasons before. Because, hey, if Luke Weaver bounces back to 2024, Luke Weaver, and Devin Williams turns back the clock to 2024, Devin Williams, and Jorge Polanco continue what he did last year, and Marcus Semien finds the fountain of youth offensively like he did in 2022 or 2023, and now we're talking. But that's a lot of things have to happen and have to happen in our favor to have a good season. Yeah, is it possible? Absolutely. Everything's possible. It's baseball. But to count on that, to have all bounce back seasons, because right now that's what you're asking for. There's no other way for this team to win. If Marcus Semien has the year like he did last year, if Jorge Polanco did what he did last year, great, that helps. But where is this other production coming from? Is Carson Bench going to be a star? Is he going to be PCA 2.0 for the Cubs? Is Alvarez going to stay healthy and be the hitter we always thought he could be? Is Brett Beatty taking another step forward? A lot of if. A lot of ifs. And that is where I don't like off seasons where you can fill holes spending money and trading for players. The Mets have the opportunity to do both. They got the money. They got the prospects. There is no reason why you can't fill the spots that you need to fill on this roster with better players. There is no reason why, if there's players available to fill your spots that you have holes in, and it doesn't matter how it is, prospects, you have to trade for them or sign them, and you don't do it and get lesser players because of they're cheaper, they don't cost as many prospects, then all you're doing is leaving too many ifs to start the season. And what do you think is going to happen? Let's say things are working out in the first half of the season, right? Some guys are having bounce back seasons. They're playing good. The Mets are winning. And then we get to the trade deadline. And we still got those holes. You're always going to need bullpen help, no matter, regardless if your bullpen's good or not. You're always going to try to get more bullpen help at the deadline. That's a guarantee that you're going to have to get. Why let the possibility where the holes that you left in the offseason, starting the season, are still apparent when you get to the trade deadline? So not only, you're going to need bullpen help. Let's say you need another starting pitcher. Let's say you need another bat. Do you really think you're going to get all that? You think it's going to be cheaper? Now you're going to have to give up more assets, prospect-wise, just to obtain players. At least in this case, Cody Bellinger is not costing you prospects. You sign him, he's your left fielder or center fielder or first baseman, depending on what you do. How about trading for a top-line starter? Well, that kills two birds with one stone, and now I feel a little bit more better about the rotation with Nolan McLean and, let's say, Tariq Skubal or Freddie Peralta at the top of your rotation. Now you can work with a 3, 4, 5 of a possibly of Senga, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, possibly Brandon Sproat. that's more acceptable. Having every fifth day of Nolan McLean and a top line starter with Nolan McLean every fifth day, I feel more confident that we can have games here, because even if you go through a losing streak, one of those guys is going to be a stopper, which the Mets did not have last year at all. And, we heard the possibility of the Mets listening to trades for David Peterson. We know about Kodai Senga being in trade talks. Like, if they're so good, and this is what I want to explain to people, and people don't seem to get that. They only care about what Senga does when he's on the mound, but it's very far and few between when he's actually really good. And you also got to give him an extra day rest, which other rotation guys and other guys in his rotation, a lot of them don't like extra rest, because sometimes they feel like their arm is too strong. And yeah, they might be throwing a little bit harder, but they're breaking, and off-speed pitches aren't doing what they're supposed to do because their arm is too strong with that extra day. I'm not saying when you get to the dog days of summer, you might want to give one or two guys an extra day. That's fine. But when you're starting the season and you're going every fifth day in spring training to get your arm built up, and then all of a sudden the season starts and now you're a six-man rotation, you're giving all these guys extra days off, everybody just thinks it's good. But when you're trying to appease one player, it's a problem. And I continue to talk about this with Kodai Senga. I just don't trust him. So it really doesn't make sense where you have listening to the trades negotiations about David Peterson and Kodai Senga. So if you're willing to listen to trade possibilities about those two pitchers, yet if they remain on this team, everybody knows you were trying to trade them, but now they're going to be a part of your five-man rotation. It's stupid. Like, if they're good enough to be in this rotation, why are you even thinking about trading them? Because if you're trying to trade them, that means either you don't trust them or you believe that one or two of these guys quit on you. And I truly believe Kodai Senga quit on his team last year. David Peterson, I think because of the amount of innings he had in 2024 coming off of that hip injury, I think it affected him later in the, midway through the season to later in the season. He was just out of gas. I think David Peterson is still a guy that could be a very solid number 4, possibly number 3. He has the stuff to do so, but it's just a matter of, is he going to get gassed every year halfway through the season? Clay Holmes, we relied on him so much. Why did we just assume that he's just going to bounce back after 170 innings, the most innings he has in his entire career? Another year older, and Dickey's arm is just going to hold up? The conversation that I had about Sean Manaea, changing his mechanics, pitching as many innings as he has in like 5 years. And everybody just expected him to be the ace of the staff and be healthy. Like, I talked about this. This is the problem that I continue to have with a lot of these pitchers, is the fact that we look at certain players and, we see him pitch well once and we're like, how good he is? Well, yeah, but there's a lot of times he's very inconsistent and not good enough. And everybody keeps on going back, oh, well, Kodai Senga, was pitching great until he got hurt. Yeah, because he's constantly injured. He's a walking injury. I'm sorry. I know Pete Alonso didn't make a good flip, and I'm not going to try to spin Pete Alonso in a positive aspect when it comes to defense. But Pete Alonso threw the ball over, high, and you reach for the ball and you pull a hammy or you pull a calf. I mean, come on. Like, you're that fragile that a little stretch and yes, trying to find a bag, you hurt your leg. I mean, come on. Like, you can't rely on Kodai Senga when he's constantly hurt. He's been here, 3 years? And he barely pitched a season and a half. So in 3 years, he pitched half his time here. And some of it not good. So it's like, what is the point of having Kodai Senga and appeasing him by giving him extra days off, messing with extra days off from other guys in his rotation to for him to do what? To hopefully get on the mound because he needs everything to be perfect, or he doesn't feel comfortable taking the mound that day? How can you rely on that? I don't want him on this team anymore. Trade him. And I know he's still here because Stearns is looking for value. But you know what? You, not just David Stearns, but the Mets organization allowed this to happen. And why do teams want to deal with somebody? Now, I'm saying if you could trade him to Pittsburgh or Colorado or Tampa Bay, where they go with 12-man rotations because, they'll have, a good pitcher as their ace, but they'll have, two guys that are bullpen arms, being openers. They can do that. But why would a contending team say, oh, you know what, we'll take Kodai Senga, and yeah, we'll pitch him every 6th day, and let's mess up the rest of the rotation off days? Doesn't make any sense. So when it comes to this rotation, it's been crickets on any type of rumors for all the pitches we talked about earlier in the show. Like, why isn't this more of a priority? Why did the Mets lose last year? Why did they choke down the final 4 months of the season? It wasn't because their bats went completely silent. Yeah, they scored nearly a run less than 2024, but it was still enough. Their offense was in the middle, a little bit higher than the middle of the pack when it came to the end of the year. They were scoring enough runs. Everybody started to play better. Lindor started to play better. Soto, we know Alonso had a great season. Nimmo played well in the second half. It didn't matter because the pitching was so bad that it didn't matter what the offense did. How many times did we lose games where the Mets scored 6 runs and the other team scored 9 or 7? You can't win that way, especially every day. The Mets were immune. They were allergic to winning low-scoring games. That was not happening with the New York Mets pitching. It wasn't happening. It was either they were going to win 6-5, or they lose the game, or they just completely lose the game. Regardless, they get blown out because their pitching sucks. They never can win low-scoring games. In the beginning of the year, in the first 2 months of the season, the pitching was excellent. And while the Mets weren't scoring, they were winning low-scoring games. And then the final 4 months of the season, they might have won 2 or 3 low-scoring games. Like, you got to win those games. And constantly, giving up 4, 5, 6 runs every freaking game, it felt like. It's ridiculous. And yeah. And look at the 0-70 something in no ninth inning comebacks. Yeah, of course. Because why? If you look at those games, and I guarantee you can go, I think it was 71 or 72 games where they didn't come back after trailing in the ninth inning. Look at all the games the Mets were losing 6-2, and they battled back the rest of the game. And it was 6-5, and then they had to make a crazy comeback in the ninth to try to tie or win the game. Look at I tell you guys, we look at that like, how is that even possible? Well, when you're losing 6-2 and it's the 5th inning and you try to creep back into a game, and then when you get to the 9th inning, you kind of run out of gas offensively, and it's like, oh, there we go again. There wasn't a lot of times the Mets were, losing by 1 run from the 6th inning on, and they were still trailing in the 9th, and they didn't score. There wasn't a lot of those where they were down 1 run most of the game and they just couldn't pull through. It was a lot of times where they were fighting back and they would lose a game 6-5. Or was it against the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken, where they were up like 5-0 and they lost the game 7-5 or 7-6? Like, there was too many of those games. And that really has to change. And to change that, which the major problem with the losing last year and the 83 wins missing the playoffs was the starting pitching. The quality or lack thereof of the starting pitching. But not only have you done nothing with this rotation so far this offseason, and we're already coming up on New Year's. We're a month and a half away from pitchers and catchers. You didn't do nothing with that. You dismantled the core, which I'm okay. It's okay to do that. And there is a pathway because there's still guys available in the trade market and the free agent market to fill those spots. But without doing anything with the starting rotation at the moment, since it's December 25th, Christmas, and now you got rid of those guys, and now you just put more work on the table for you to do instead of just worrying about starting pitching. You could have ran this back one more year. I wouldn't have been happy with it when it comes to the roster or the lineup, excuse me. You know, if you would have kept Nimmo, kept Pete Alonso, kept McNeil, or maybe traded McNeil, but sign Jorge Polanco with those guys here, you know, that's added an addition to the lineup. I'm not saying Polanco would make the difference, but it would look a lot better with Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Polanco. Now you're having a conversation because Polanco could have easily been the DH, and now you're talking about a lineup that's looking pretty good. And guess what? Now you only have to worry about your starting pitching. But because you traded Nimmo, you let Alonso go, you let Diaz go, and now you traded McNeil, you not only have to worry about starting pitching, now you also got to put a lineup together and a roster together that involves position players. Because right now you're using a bunch of prospects or a bunch of guys that have down seasons and guys that are not developed yet in Mauricio and Acuna. Vientos coming off a bad season. Brett Beatty coming up over a revelation season where he actually showed something. But that doesn't mean Beatty's going to all of a sudden look like a professional ball player and continue his upside. We have no idea if Vientos, was this just a sophomore slump for him, or is this actually Mark Vientos that we've seen in 2025? That's the problem. There's too many question marks. Again, not only do you have question marks in this rotation, you have question marks in the lineup because you made question marks in the lineup. This wasn't a situation where, you know, guys were injured and, you know, you can't trust them or anything like that. You traded Brandon Nimmo. You didn't offer a contract to Pete Alonso. You screwed up the negotiations with Edwin Diaz, and you just traded McNeil. So you added question marks to the roster. That was David Stearns. And you still haven't done nothing with the rotation. You added 2 bullpen arms. So this is the problem. And I appreciate everybody's kind words. I appreciate that. Merry Christmas to everybody. Explosive. Am I drinking tonight? Nah, might have a sip or two. I came back from Christmas Eve. I was by family. I didn't drink because I had to drive about 40 minutes from where my family lives, from where I am. So no, but I'll dabble today for sure. No work, so that's fun. But I do appreciate all the kind words today, and everybody tuning. Listen, it's 12:40 in the morning here on Christmas Day, right? Over 129 people on YouTube and X. I mean, that's why you guys are awesome. JD, don't worry about me drinking and driving, right? I'm responsible, just not responsible when it comes to the Mets with my mouth. Let's see. So we got what? Just under 100 on YouTube and just under 40 on X. So again, you guys are up. I know a lot of you, some have kids, some, family, and you're still watching. So I do appreciate that. I did a poll because I wasn't going to do a show tonight, but I did a poll doing a Christmas show, and about over 70% said hell yeah. So I said, hell yeah, let's go. Why the hell not, right? What the hell else am I going to do? Sleep? No. I love talking about the Mets, even though they treat me like crap and they treat us like crap. But what the hell else are we going to do in the winter? Right? Talk about this team, trying to make them better. The first super chat of the night, APAP. How you doing, buddy? We lost Pete Alonso. I'm hurting. I'm a Met fan raised in the Bronx. Oh, that sucks, but I understand. Bronx did my grandfather, a Brooklyn Dodger fan, take me to the wrong team in the 80s. Yeah, well, listen, the Mets ran this town, Mets ran New York in the 80s, right? So it was a good time to become a Mets fan, right? The 80s was it was the Mets. New York was the Mets. The Mets were in New York. When the Yankees were falling over themselves and having their down years, down decade was the 80s, right? The Mets were top of the town in the 80s. They were the talk of the town. So a lot of fans became fans around that time, which makes sense, right? If you grew up in the late 90s or the 90s in general, you probably were a Yankee fan. I mean, I grew up in the 90s and, well, I became a Met fan. So if you want to blame my dad, blame my dad. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, I understand the frustration, right? I understand the emotional connection to Pete Alonso, right? APAP, I'm not sure if you're a new subscriber, but I do appreciate the super chat. And if you are a new subscriber, great. Keep on coming back for more. And I do appreciate everybody coming in on the Christmas early morning. But the emotional connection, I stopped the emotional connection with players years ago. Not saying that you should, but when you do that, ultimately, you're probably going to get burned. And you're probably going to get hurt or pissed off. Because I've learned something. And not saying that it's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying how I feel. The emotional connection that I have to players is not the same as it used to be 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's just not. Right? I used to live and die Ray Ordonez. That was my guy when I was younger. That was my guy. Wasn't the best player, but he was a badass defender. And you damn right I went into the yard, into the field, and tried to do what Ray Ordonez did on the field. Almost impossible. Very few can do what he did. Right? My emotional connection was that. Yeah, I wanted the Mets to win. But man, Ray Ordonez was my guy. And just like young kids, Pete Alonso's this guy, Nimmo, other guys as well. But what I've learned, especially over the last 10 years or so, is the fact that I'm rooting for these players because they're wearing what? The Mets jersey. That's it. I am not rooting for Brandon Nimmo on the Texas Rangers. I am not rooting for Pete Alonso on the Baltimore Orioles or Jeff McNeil in Sacramento. I am not rooting for Edwin Diaz for the Dodgers. Right? That emotional connection is completely gone now from you guys because he's not on the Mets. If the Mets win 95 games this year, I know I'm not drinking, I promise. I'm just saying, hypothetical. If the Mets win 95 games this year, not one person is going to give a damn what Diaz is doing with the Dodgers or Pete Alonso is doing with the Orioles or Jeff McNeil is doing with the Athletics or Brandon Nimmo doing with Texas. It's just not going to happen. Nobody's going to care. Nobody will care. In 2024, when the Mets went on that run, did anybody care about Jacob deGrom? No, because Luis Severino and Sean Manaea were pitching their asses off. And the Mets were playing well. They went on that run. Nobody cared. We were singing OMG for a journeyman, Jose Iglesias, that's all in his last leg. Like, the emotional connection, and APAP, once again, thank you for the comment and the super chat. So, it's the emotional connection. I figured out myself that I am not getting emotionally attached to these players. I'm just not. And I'm not a big jersey buyer. I'm not. Not for a reason of, I don't think they're going to be on this team in 2 years. I just don't want to invest in something that my loyalty to a player, because that's what it is, and their loyalty is probably half-ass. All that nonsense that Pete Alonso spoke and Brandon Nimmo spoke or Diaz spoke, it didn't matter. They were taking the money. They were accepting trades. So, which is their right. So if they're not going to have loyalty to us, I am not having loyalty to them. When they wear the Mets jersey, I'll root for them, right? I got 2 jerseys. I'm not a big jersey person. I said that for a long time, right? I'll buy shirts that have names on the back because those are, $25, $30, $35, $40 sometimes. But to invest in a jersey, $175, $200, $250 for an identical jersey with a player on the name, I got 2 jerseys. My first jersey that I bought in years was when the Mets traded for Francisco Lindor. And you can go back that's when I first started my channel. And I said, and I had that same day they traded for him, and whenever they signed him officially and extended him, I went to get the jersey and I bought Lindor jersey. Why? Because it's a long-term deal. No trade clause, all that fun stuff. I didn't, it was just a long-term deal. Great. And the next one I bought was a Juan Soto jersey. And you know what? It might backfire in a couple of years. Juan Soto might opt out of his contract in a couple of years. Lindor still might get traded. But you know what? It wasn't about the player itself. It was just the fact that Steve Cohen just took over this team when the Lindor trade happened. So it felt like a new leaf was turned with this organization. And if Steve Cohen is going to put his hard-earned money into the team and into good players and great players, then I'm going to support that. That's why I did it, right? I never bought a Pete Alonso jersey, never bought a Brandon Nimmo jersey or Diaz jersey or DeGrom jersey. And you know what? I don't fault nobody for doing that. But I just didn't feel that I should do that. I should invest in those players because I don't know. There's something about players. I always thought Pete Alonso, for example. I know he's a quirky guy. He's not a big. I didn't buy a Harvey jersey. I had a Wright jersey. So, but that was something. I was a kid. So my mom and dad bought me the jersey. So it's not something that I went and spent my hard-earned money. My parents did. They spent their hard-earned money, right? And I appreciate that. But if it was my money, I probably wouldn't have got a Wright jersey. To be quite honest, I probably would have. That's a lie. I probably would have. But I was young enough where Dave Wright was the main guy. My parents like, hey, Christmas, Wright jersey, great. Hey, cool. I had the black Wright jersey. Great, perfect. So, and again, I have no problem with people buying jerseys, loving the player. That's fine. But always remember why you got into this. All right. Why do you turn on SNY or ESPN or Apple or God knows where baseball is going to be in all these years? Right? Turn it on the TV to watch what? The New York Mets, right? From as long as you started watching baseball and you became a Mets fan, players come and go. But that damn name on the chest always stays the same. It either says New York or it says the Mets. Yeah, we got some different colored jerseys, but it's always going to say those 2 things. The road, New York, and the home Mets. That's it. That is it. Remember that. Because as quickly as what just happened this offseason could happen at any given moment, just remember, in the end of March, when the New York Mets have opening day, we're turning on SNY. We're going to be rooting for the team to win. And it doesn't matter who is wearing that jersey because we're just going to what? Root for our team to win. That's it. We're going to root for the guys that are wearing that jersey that year. Nobody likes Devin Williams. Who cares? He's wearing a Mets jersey. I hope he hits 45 saves this year. Luke Weaver, former Yankee. Devin Williams, former Yankee. Who cares? If they help this team win, I don't care. Jorge Polanco. There's no attachment to Jorge Polanco. But if he wins and plays well for the New York Mets, great. Don't care. Same thing goes for anybody else. You want to give me another ex-Yankee and Cody Bellinger? Great. I don't care. If he helps us win, wonderful. We always have to remember that, guys. And I appreciate. I'm not talking about the kids. The kids can be emotionally attached to players. That's how you become fans. You know, sometimes your dad or your family or somebody that is raising you is a Mets fan. You probably will become a Mets fan. But a kid that might not have, being raised that has sports fan, but finds the love for sports and says, "Hey, I like the Mets." Poor kid. Go a different route, but sometimes you just can't. You can't go a different route. You just love it, and you're emotionally attached as a kid to a player. That's fine. There's a lot of them that were attached to Pete Alonso. Understandable. I'm not blaming the kid for that, but it's some adults that cry like Pete Alonso is the end of the world. The Mets organization is still here. They're still going to play baseball at the end of March. Spring training, pitches and catches in a month and a half. It'll be okay. Now, I'm not saying the Mets are going to win, but we've gone through seasons where the Mets, big signing was, Dylan Betances and Jed Lowry. And guess what we did? We watched baseball for 162 games. When we know this team was going to be bad, but there's always hope on opening day, smelling that grass, watching Citi Field. It's great to see baseball back, meaningful baseball games. We still watched. Yeah, we bitched and moaned. We complained that they lost and they're losing, but we're still coming back. And maybe that's our fault. But what the hell else are we going to do during the summer? You only go to the beach so many times. That's it, right? Baseball's our life. I mean, I'm doing a YouTube channel. It's my goddamn life. But before the YouTube channel, it was my life. I still go to Citi. Well, I'm out of New York now, but when I was in New York, I lived there. I went to work, went to a game, then went back to work. Like that, that was my summer. I traveled around the country. Everybody knows that, right? I have a 7-line jersey right now. This was Minnesota in, what was it, last 2024, if I'm not mistaken? When they went to Minnesota, might have been 2024. Yeah, had to be 2024, 2023. One of those years. I don't remember. The year is here somewhere. I don't remember. It's one of those years. So many games I go to. But, I travel with the 7-line army to go to games. When I go to spring training, I'm sitting with the group on the berm. Right? I just bought my ticket. Booked the hotel, booked plane. I'm going to opening day at Citi Field. I'm traveling back to New York. Like, it's wonderful. I love that stuff. I miss going to games at Citi Field every day. That 10-game homestand, I probably go to 9 of them. Like, that's what I used to do. That was my summer. Now that down south, I don't have the luxury of going to Citi Field every day. I got to pick and choose when I can fly out because, again, that costs money, that costs time. Can't just get off work. It was easy. I don't need to take a vacation to go to Citi Field when I'm in Queens, when I live in Queens and work in Queens. Now, guess what? I'm down south now. I mean, it was 72 freaking degrees on Christmas Day here. I mean, damn. It's weird. If you follow me on my social media pages, and I advise everybody to do so, I posted a collage of my dashboard on my car saying 72 degrees and Christmas music playing. Like, it's crazy. I can't get used to being down south. It's weird to me. Like, I can go to, minor league baseball games because I'm in a state where they don't have a professional baseball team. I'm in North Carolina. I got the Durham Bulls. That's what I got. I got a minor league team. And Data Ray's minor league team. So it's like, it is what it is. But I watch every game. I'm doing pre and post games with myself and Chris. I do God knows how many shows during the off season. It's not because I do it as a hobby. I do it because I love it. Just like you guys continue to come back to the channel. I'm not saying you like me, but sometimes when there ain't nothing else going on, hey, Rob's talking about Mets. Who cares what he's saying? Even if you disagree with everything, but you're here and supporting, and I appreciate that. So it's crazy, man. It really is. I'm going to get to the super chats really quickly, and I know there was a couple. APAP says, thank you again for the super chat. I don't like how they did Pete Alonso last year. How do you know not pay the most important player you had since they were right? Well, eventually they did, right? They weren't going to give him a long-term deal. That was obvious. They gave him a 3-year deal with an opt-out. Or 2-year deal with an opt-out. Okay. He was going to opt out if he had a good – even if he had a bad season, I find it hard to believe he was not going to opt out. I think it was more disrespectful to not even offer him a contract. Right? David Stearns didn't have to do anything last year. There was no market for Pete Alonso. So I have no problem with David Stearns not throwing him a 5-year deal. Like, why do that when there was nobody else giving him anything close to that? This year was a different story. You know, there was no draft pick attached, no comp pick attached. He had a great season. But to not offer him a contract, even if it was like a measly 2-year deal, there was no respect there. And that annoyed me, not because I'm the biggest Pete Alonso fan. You guys know I'm not. But when that guy, blood, sweat, and tears, played his ass off, never was lazy, hustled all the time. Not the greatest defender. We all know that. And he's a little doofus, but he's still a really good player. And he was the face of your franchise. He's the home run leading champion on your team, in your organization. And there's no respect there offering him a contract. That pissed me off. So all right, let's see what else we got. Mashin, how you doing, buddy? And Merry Christmas. I appreciate that. APAP, once again, let's see what you got here. Steve Cohen has been a disappointing. Put in perspective, I was 9 years old when the Mets last won the championship. How old am I now? Well, I mean, you can do the math, right? You're an older person, right? You know, you're up there in age now. It's been a long time. 40 years we're coming up on when, you know, the Mets won a World Series. Last time won a World Series. So, look, I wasn't even born yet. You know, I seen 2 World Series appearances in my lifetime. Right? When I really started to get into baseball was the mid-90s, when I really started to pay attention and understand everything that was going on. Right? I seen playoffs in 99, playoffs in 2000, playoffs in 2006, playoffs in 2015 and 16, and 2022 and 2024. So in all those years, 30 plus years, I've seen 7 playoff appearances, 2 World Series appearances. Not a lot of fun. So when people say, why are you negative? What's there to be positive about with this organization? They continue to disappoint us. And I'm supposed to spill positivity. I'm not going to lie to you guys. If I'm pissed off, if I'm not happy with this team or what their direction is, or what David Stearns or our GM is doing, or this team is losing during the season, they're going to get the rap and my negativity until they go back to 2024, how negative it was in April and May. When the Mets went on that run from June 11th on, you couldn't find a more positive channel because they earned it. They're not going to earn my positivity and my respect if they're going to play like crap. Or our president of baseball ops is not going to do his job and obtain talent. I am not going to continue to spill positivity when they don't deserve it. That goes for the players, that goes for the manager, the coaches, the bullpen, anybody. The GM does not matter. Do your goddamn job. Your job as a GM or president of baseball operations is bringing talent to win ball games. Your goal should be to win a World Series. I don't want to hear that nonsense about sustained success because there's a lot of different definitions. And APOP, thank you for all those super chats. I appreciate that. And we got one more. Chuck, how you doing, buddy? I'm gonna get into this for a second. Merry Christmas, Rob. Love the show, and I am drinking for both of us. I appreciate that. Here you go. Your first beer at City Field on open day is on me. I appreciate that. Again, message me on my social media accounts. Follow me. Get in touch with me. If you want to meet me at City Field, we'll have a beer. No problem. That would be fun. And I appreciate the super chat, buddy. Again, I never ask for super chats or any type of donations. You guys know that. I do appreciate that. That's awesome, guys. You know, I don't ask for them. I never, hound people with it at all. So I do appreciate that when you guys do. And Chuck, hopefully I see you at City Field on opening day. So what the hell was I saying? Okay. I don't remember what I was saying because you guys are awesome. And I'm sorry about that. Oh, God, what was I saying? If you guys can remind me. Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, so, I don't know. I just feel like the player's job is to win on the field. The GM and the president of baseball ops, whoever's running the team is the actual guy doing player acquisition. Oh, there we go. Sustained success. There's a lot of different definitions. That's where I stopped at. Sustained success can mean a lot of different things. What is sustained success? Being a team over 500, but not making the playoffs? Because you can have an 85 win team, but you miss the playoffs. Is that sustained success? What happens if you win 85, 87, and 88 games 3 years in a row, but you miss the playoffs every one of those years? Are you going to get credit? You're going to give credit and a pat on the back for sustained success because you were over 500 3 years in a row? It's a broad statement, and that's why I don't like that term. Sustained success can mean anything. Did David Stearns tell you the meaning of his sustained success, what he thinks that means? Because sustained success, in my opinion, what it should mean is making the playoffs every year and having a chance to win the World Series, not winning a few games over 500 and hope for the best. Screw that. I don't want that. People get overly emotional about sustained success. Yes, I want that. It would be nice to make, the playoffs every 2 years. But David Stearns never said that. He says sustained success. So if you're over 500, that's success, right? That's sustained success because you don't have a losing record. You have a winning record. You just didn't make the playoffs. Now you hope with that over 500 numbers that you make the playoffs. Nobody would have cared the Mets won 83 games if they made the playoffs in game 162 and actually, look like the baseball team that can't beat the Marlins in game 162 when you got all the help in the world and the Reds lost. All you had to do was win. Nobody would have cared about 83 games that they won. You made the playoffs. You have the opportunity to win a World Series because you know anything can happen. So that's the problem. Once again, APAP. But you know what I ride with my team? Yeah, of course. I go down with the ship, don't we all? I love my team. Knicks, Mets, Jets, Rangers, WFAN. 90s lineup. Yeah, that was the best lineup of WFAN. I don't know what it is now, but you don't need to ask me for a super chat. You do a good job. I appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, listen, I'm a Knicks fan. I'm a Mets fan. Everybody knows I'm a Ranger fan as well. I am not a Jet fan. I'm a Cowboys fan. Everybody knows that if you're on my channel. So yes. So I completely understand. My teams suck. All right. In my lifetime, I was, oh my God, 6 years old when the Rangers won the cup. All right, let me do the math. Yeah, around that, 6, 7 years old. All right. I watched the Rangers. My dad was a Ranger fan. He watched the Rangers. Yeah, I mean, great. Right? Cool. But I was 6 and 7 years old. I can care less what was going on with the game. I mean, I understood it, but I was 6 and 7 years old. I was playing with my Power Rangers and my wrestling figures. That's what I was doing. That was it. I was playing my Super Nintendo. That's what I was doing. My Sega. That's what I was playing. So when the Rangers won the cup, I couldn't enjoy it as, even a teenager that could appreciate it. You know when I appreciated it? When I started to understand the game, I became a teenager and an adult. Then I appreciated it because I watched, back, the sweeping the Islanders, the craziness of the Devils and Rangers, also being the Capitals as well, but the Devils and the Rangers, Mateau, all that. Game 7 against Vancouver, like the waiting is over. I mean, geez, with Sam Rosen, like that is what I like. That I appreciate it now as an adult, but I didn't appreciate that when I was 6, 7 years old. I didn't remember, but my dad told me a story, and I know we're talking about baseball here, but I just wanted to bring it up since APAP brought up the other teams, right? Obviously, the Rangers won in '94, the Stanley Cup. They had the parade down the Canyon of Heroes. My dad was like, "Hey, you want to go to the parade?" I'm 6 to 7 years old, right? I care about toys. I care about Power Rangers and God knows what else. A lot of dumb stuff as a kid. My dad's like, "You want to go to the parade?" I said, "No, I wanted to go to school." All right. How did that work out for me? All right. Really, seriously. How did that work out for me going to school? Right? What the hell was I doing in second grade, third grade? Like, damn it, man. Stupid me. I could have got the memory of a lifetime. I guess I didn't. I didn't go. Oh, man, terrible. But it is what it is. Nothing I can do now except, talk about this damn team and hope that the Knicks, who probably have, amongst all my teams, have the best chance of winning a championship. Right? They got to worry about the Pistons. We all know about OKC. Right? The Knicks are the best chance of winning the championship. I don't know about the Mets, the Rangers. God knows the Cowboys just got eliminated, so I can care less about that. Obviously I'm from New York, so I pay attention to the Giants and Jets. I mean, the Giants might have the number 1 pick if they lose against the Raiders, and the Jets are irrelevant, like they always are. So it's like, God, like, could we get anything here? So man, yeah, yeah, exactly. Sega Genesis playing Sonic the Hedgehog, Super Nintendo, Super Mario Bros. Let's go. I even remember, I don't even remember how I played it. I don't remember what system it was or what game. But I remember playing Carmen Sandiego. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? I remember playing that. I mean, Jesus, you couldn't save games. You had to leave that sucker on, Good times. Simple times. I apologize, guys. I'm sorry. I'm going way off board, but you guys are talking about certain things, and it just brought me to think. Yeah, Mr. Classic, I get that on the Switch too, but you know what? And I don't judge at all. I'm in my 30s. I am. I used. I got a PS5 right on my stand over there. I barely play it. I used to Call of Duty. I've been buying MLB The Show. I've been buying, for years, as far as I can remember. So I'm just like, I just don't, I don't have the time. As you guys know, I work overnight. I'm mostly sleeping. I don't have time, and I wish I did. I every year I buy the show. Every year, I might play it 3 or 4 times, and that's it. I get busy. I got shit to do. Sorry, excuse my language, but I curse here. And that's it. I play it a couple of times, and that's it. I get excited for the baseball season, and I always tell myself I'm going to play the games just like they're playing the live games. When they play game 1, I play game 1. They play game 2, I play game 2. And I get to like game 7, and then I don't play the game again. And then they're on game 90, during the season, and I'm still on game 7. So it's like, it sucks. I lived and died playing video games. I tell you that, right? When Metal Gear Solid, Siphon Filter, those were my games. When PlayStation came out, those were my games. I love those games. I just bought the Metal Gear Solid game that came out, what was it, a couple of months ago. I haven't even played it. I downloaded it. I bought it. I have not played it. I'm not sure why. But what I do is when I travel, when I go to Mets games, when I travel around like when I go to spring training, I'm taking my PS5 because what the hell else am I going to do when I'm not doing anything in the hotel? Right? I play that. That's it. So Siphon Filter, Metal Gear Solid, those were awesome. Those are my games. And yeah, the graphics sucked, but they were really good back in those days. Good as it can get. So, all right, guys, let's just finish up in the end of the Midnight Christmas edition Mets Talk Live here on the channel. Again, guys, we were rolling over 100, 150 on both X and YouTube. I mean, we're hanging on around 90 and 50 on X. I do appreciate it, guys. You've been awesome. All the super chats, always appreciated as well. You just rolling the super chats, and I do appreciate that. That's crazy. You talk about what were we talking about? I still got my Super Nintendo. I wish I did. That would have been pretty cool. I appreciate that still, and it still works. That's even better. You gotta blow out the cartridge. Good times. Now it's all boring. Just press a button. So boring. You know how hard it was to get those games to work sometimes? Another one too. NHL 94. That was the best hockey game ever. With the stupid little Stanley Cup. It's great times, man. I love those games. The oldest basic game in my collection is Major League Baseball. Wow, really? For NES? Jesus. That's crazy. That is insane. That's pretty cool. So to finish up the stream, guys, all in all, the New York Mets got a lot of work to do. Blades of Steel. That's awesome. Remember Doom? This is great. I love this stuff. Going down memory lane because the Mets suck. All right, so all right, guys. So again, the Mets have a lot of work to do. They need top line starter. They need 2 outfielders, or at least 1 outfielder. They need a first baseman. I still don't understand what David Stearns is doing. I really don't. I don't know what the plan is. If anybody can think that they know the plan, please say it, because I have no goddamn idea what David Stearns is doing. I hope I knew. I really do. Because at least if he had a direction and he was transparent with us, I can try to get behind it. I might not agree with it. Like if he says tomorrow, hey guys, listen, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We're going to be rebuilding. I want to be transparent with you. We're going to be rebuilding. I'm not going to agree with that, but I respect the fact that he's being transparent and he's doing what he wants to do. Yeah, he might be doing what he wants to do, but his offseason so far makes no sense. Like Jorge Polanco and Marcus Semien aren't, big additions. They're supposed to be supplemental players for your core. Well, there isn't really a core anymore. So, and these guys are in their mid-30s, so I just don't understand it. And the lack of any type of conversations with starting pitching is alarming. I mean, we're a month and a half away from pitching the catchers. I'm not saying the Mets can't make a trade and a signing and boom, we have a good rotation. I mean, that can happen in a snap of a finger, but where are we on December 25th on Christmas Day? Speaking nearly an hour and a half on this midnight show, Mets Talk Live. 2 outfield holes, a first base hole. God knows we have a top line starter hole that we have to fill. Oh my God, you just explosive. You just hit the soul right there with Pokemon. Yellow, red, blue. Oh, that was the good times. Playing my Game Boy under the desk at school. Good times. Love it. That big ass block. All right, guys. So hopefully the Mets surprise us here and get a little Christmas gifts under our tree and a little bit of good New Year's news for all of us. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live Christmas edition midnight show right here on the channel and on X. You guys were great. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I know it's late. Some of you off, some of you might be working, whatever you're doing. I do appreciate you guys on X and on YouTube. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the channel, thank you for tuning in. So keep on coming back for more and subscribe to the channel. Guys, follow me on my social media pages on X and Twitter, X and TikTok. I post a lot of stuff there. I post all my shows on X. When things really happen, I post stuff on TikTok as well. I should be a little more active on TikTok, but you know, I'm an old man, so I'm not very efficient on TikTok. But hey, I gotta learn sometime. But I put some stuff on TikTok as well, trying to increase my activity on there as well. So we'll see what happens. If any breaking news happens, I doubt anything will happen on Christmas Day. But if it does, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. It's a relaxing day for me. I already spent my time with family on Christmas Eve. I'm chilling, relaxing. And if any breaking news happens, I'll have you covered on that breaking news, guys. So have a great night. Merry Christmas, guys, and be safe. I'll see you next time on whatever show I might do. And tune in for more, guys. Have a great night. Merry Christmas, and let's go Mets, guys. Good night, guys.
Yeah. Queens in the snow tonight. Mets so live on the air. Turn it up. Rob on the mic like whoa. City feel frosty. Breathe in the cold air. Beanie with the logo orange, blue everywhere. Building up a snowman. Jersey for the coat. Number on the back like he just got the vote. Kids got mitts on. Dads got dreams out. Arguing rotations. That's what the team bout. Camera on the crowd. We the news, not the guests.